One of the most interesting owners in the world of football has departed, and it is time to exercise a bit of an in memoriam because I have a different opinion of this guy than I think, well, not most people, but a lot of people do. Right, and the person is Daniel Levy, the ageless wonder who's been leading Tottenham as the executive chairman for 25 years. Now, this came as a bit of a surprise to me, right? Because Daniel Levy, I thought, and man, I was just shacked and a fool here, I thought was the owner of Tottenham. He is a minority owner of Tottenham, but he is not actually the owner of the club. And so in this case, not only did I get the news that Daniel Levy was being removed as executive chairman, which there hasn't really been a ton of explanation as to why up to this point, kind of uncovering that as we go on with this video, but I also had to grapple with the news that Daniel Levy was a minority owner, right? The actual owner is a group called ENIC, E-N-I-C, and their leader is Joe Lewis. They are the majority owner, often willing to take a back seat, a la the Glazers at Manchester United, which like Sir Jim Ratcliffe is basically in the same spot as Daniel Levy, minority owner that is kind of put in charge to be the face of the operation, to be the guy running things. But there's one, I had to find it. There's one visual that I think represents Daniel Levy so well. Like, we look at the Big Six, and you look at the financial stability of the Big Six. Tottenham Hotspur kicks everybody's ass in that. They do. And up until last season, consistency in results as well was something that Daniel Levy was able to help produce. Now, obviously, the knock on Daniel Levy was that he hadn't won, they hadn't won a trophy since whatever it was, 2009. But that trophy that they won at the time was actually under Daniel Levy's stewardship. He took over in 2001. So he did win trophies before then, and then obviously won a Europa League in his final full year as the guy in charge. Bit of a weird time, by the way, to remove an executive chairman of a club, right? Maybe they were waiting until after the transfer window, but maybe they had informed him ahead. It doesn't sound like he knew ahead of time. Maybe they'd informed him ahead of time, hey, you're going to have this one more transfer window, and then we're going to go ahead and pull the rug out from under you. But I think this graphic encapsulates why I actually always liked Daniel Levy, because there is a plague. Let's be honest. There's a plague in the world of football of short-term thinking, like an absolute plague, devastating plague, nearly bankrupt, probably should have bankrupted Barcelona, right? They basically just were able to bully their way out of probably should have been bankrupt, right? All sorts of clubs running into massive financial issues. Manchester United having to fire lunch ladies allegedly because they are running up against the fact that they don't have enough money, right? All this shit's happening all over the place. Daniel Levy is not somebody that fell for that. Daniel Levy is somebody that runs a football club the way I would want my football club run. If I owned the club, the way I would want to run it. Both of those things being true, which is we're going to spend the money that we have. We're going to make prudent financial decisions, and we're not going to be overly influenced by the really intense, ridiculously intense amount of pressure that is put on club owners, people that run clubs, to spend huge money on players that, you know, in the vast majority of cases at Tottenham Hotspur, they didn't need. Right? If you look at the results, right, that Daniel Levy was kind of able to usher in, these are the league position finishes, right? He takes over in 2001, they are 12th, right? 9th, 10th, 14th, 9th, 5th, 5th, 11th. You know where this is headed, though? A litany of European place, top 6, 7 finishes, you know, your second, your third, your third place finishes, then the massive outlier, which was 17th, but with a Europa League victory, right? He ushered in the era of competence at Tottenham, like the modern era of competence and competitiveness. And let's call a spade here. Tottenham is not a Big Six club without Daniel Levy, right? That's 24 years of stewardship. The Premier League had existed for less than a decade when Daniel Levy took over as the executive chairman of Tottenham. And everything might be about to change with Tottenham. Maybe they're looking at this like, we're going to start splashing more money now, which would be wise, considering the Premier League, you make so much money that you definitely can splash more, but it's not like Tottenham hasn't spent any money recently. They have. But Daniel Levy is, in my opinion, the number one reason that Tottenham Hotspur was able to become a Big Six team. Everybody especially people that, my age and younger, right? The Big Six is just something that's existed since time immemorial. Those are the Big Six clubs in the Premier League, and then everybody is, all the other clubs are not in there. But teams like Chelsea and Tottenham that round out the Big Six, by no means were they guaranteed that spot. By no means was like the twists of fate. We have Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal, right? Those teams were always there. Those teams were winning 20, 30 titles back in the day when Tottenham was running in 12th, right? Manchester City, they got the biggest single cash injection that any club's ever gotten because this was pre-FFP, so they were able to just come in and spend a ridiculous amount of money. So, of course, they're there. And then you have Tottenham, right? And Chelsea obviously had Abramovich, who was able to kind of, do what Manchester City did in some ways and spend his way in. And Chelsea obviously does it their own way. They're still doing it their own way. But Tottenham basically just managed their way into being a Big Six team and consistently, every year expecting to be in the Champions League or the Europa League, competing on European stages, making it to the Champions League final, right? Doing the sorts of things that massive clubs do. And Daniel Levy was the guy that was responsible for that. And I think something else that's very telling is that journalists, right, like people that cover the world of football, they write all the stories and stuff, the way they've written about Daniel Levy is so flattering, right? Because these people are around, right, actual journalists, ESPN and The Guardian, like good journalistic outlets that are around football clubs and see all different types of owners. Their reviews of Daniel Levy's time are absolutely glowing. I mean, unbelievably. Many supporters regard winning as the only thing that matters, but the fan on the street doesn't understand the intricacies of running a club. Daniel Levy was a loyal custodian of Spurs who knew his job was to protect the club. You go to ESPN's article, and God, the way that the first couple paragraphs read, it's like a flattering obituary almost. Today, Spurs boast one of the finest stadiums in the world, and a state-of-the-art training ground so luxurious, former head coach Jose Mourinho once waxed lyrical about the huge pillows in the on-site bedrooms. That's Levy. His attention to detail was unrivaled, reflected in the stunning Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with its retractable pitch and in-house microbrewery. He is a man of little sleep and unrelenting standards. And I think that also points out to me all the stuff that it's very easy for us like fans to ignore when it comes to these positions. Like obviously Daniel Levy's going to be judged on wins and losses and the players that he has on the team and what they're able to do. But also there's a million other things that Daniel Levy's in charge of. He managed to go through a massive stadium build project that has worked spectacularly and is making the club a lot of money. He had, state-of-the-art training facilities, all this stuff Manchester United, for example, but there's more than one example, doesn't have, right? They've got this, like they didn't take care of it in time. They weren't paying attention to the long-term game. Daniel Levy was always paying attention to the long-term game. And even though a bunch of people always went at him for not winning or not keeping his best players or whatever, I think 99% of clubs would be head over heels to have an executive chairman for 25 years as good as Daniel Levy. And they would be lucky. They would be lucky to have an executive chairman as good as Daniel Levy. Because this is the type of owner you want. And as modern football gets more and more about spending and driving your team into debt and skirting the FFP line, guys like Daniel Levy might just not really exist anymore, particularly at massive clubs. You'll see them pop up at, I don't want to say Bayer Leverkusen's not a massive club, but maybe that type of club, or Borussia Dortmund, where I would say those clubs are, at least in terms of their potential European impact, a step below where like Tottenham is, mainly because of the Premier League now, and obviously it's the financial firepower of those teams. But those clubs, maybe up to that level, Dortmund's probably unfair to include in that category, but RB Leipzig or whatever, they're going to run themselves intelligently and try and make that money. But these real like top 20 biggest clubs in the world, which again, Dortmund might be in that, but you get, even if Dortmund's not in this, right, you get the idea that I'm trying to express, right? That one step down type of club from the absolute biggest clubs in the world. You're not really going to have a Daniel Levy running those types of clubs anymore. I just don't see it. There's just too much of a dick measuring contest going on between all of those teams, and there's so much money flying around. So he will be missed. He was like the one sane person in a room full of idiots. And now I feel like we're just probably going to introduce another insane person, and it's just going to get even wilder.